Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I've got a great guest. Her name is Barbara Drtina. She has earned her degree in early childhood education. She has lived in a number of different places in the world and loves to experience different cultures. She was able to realize her dream of being a stay-at-home mom after stabilizing her marriage and finances. After being married 20 years, she found herself in a high conflict divorce trying to raise two daughters as a single mom. This situation changed the course of her life. She became the targeted parent in the throes of parental alienation. She has been navigating through this for over 20 years. She has lost one daughter to suicide at the age of 15 and is speaking out on the collateral damage of suicide as well as parental alienation. She believes that parental alienation is the root cause of her daughter's death and the estrangement of her other daughter and her grandson. Her passion is to create awareness of parental alienation and to save our children from being put in the middle where separation or divorce happen, and to champion the rights of our children to have full access to both parents. Our children and the target parent are the collateral damage. And we're going to have a great talk with her because she also wrote a book as well. And we're going to talk about that probably a little bit later. But I had met Barb at the Florida Jacksonville Resolution Center a little while back. So we're going to talk. How you doing, Barb?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Okay. So, how's things been going?
Well, just starting to speak out about this has really made me have a lot of passion, and meeting people like yourself and not feeling alone, and giving a voice to all these things going on. And hopefully we're at a time now that um, things are starting to move along, because as it said in there, like, I've been dealing with this for 20 years and now it's going to a second generation. So but I was careful about not speaking out. And I don't know if you experienced this as well. It's really risky, or you get pushback from family. And I happen to be an open, transparent type of person. And if it can help other people, any of my story, then I want to use it for good. And so it was great being a part of the retreat that we both were on, and
Yes,
that I got to meet you and hear all this wonderful stuff that you're doing.
definitely. I was really impressed with everything you said at the retreat. And it was just great, and I mean, you told your experience of losing your daughter, and that was just felt so bad that had to happen. That should never have had to happen.
Yes. Well, and the odd thing is, um, yeah, it's so insidious. And so I've been trying to work on compassion with my other daughter too, because they're so, and they don't realize they're brainwashed. They don't realize that their thinking is flawed. Um, and, to lose a life over something of this. And we really thought that she maybe had turned a corner. But when you separate and you're still parents, you need to communicate. And this man refused to have any conversation whatsoever. And we didn't have cell phones back then, or
Mhm.
the internet. And it was like, I will never talk to you or speak to you. Well, we have two little children,
Mhm.
and I waited 11 years to have children to see that I
Mhm.
had a stable marriage and I
Oh,
could raise them, and so it wasn't like a fly by night fluky thing.
mhm. Mhm.
I don't think you know somebody until you divorce them.
A good point. That's a very good point.
And so I feel that it's really important right now to speak out, especially with the pandemic, with the times that we're in, that more and more people are separating or not even marrying, and we have children here. And that's
Mhm.
our future. That's our future assets for our culture, our country. And I've learned that other countries don't deal with it in this manner. And coming from early childhood education, those years are so moldable. And so then how will they go on in their life with any relationship?
Mhm. And Dr. Mark Roseman said that this will affect 6 generations to come.
One day it was I actually was I thought my other daughter and I were healing our relationship, and you have to walk on pins and needles, being neutral. You can't respond to any of the I mean, Dr. Amy Baker talks about one of those attributes is the cruelty that comes at us, and we have to constantly eat it up and turn the other cheek, and not be hurt and scarred to react. And it
Mhm,
takes all the emotional energy. So what does that affect? Your jobs, your friendships, because it's always there. And
mhm,
so I remember I thought we were really working and healing our relationship, and I got to be there when my grandson was born. And I live 2.5 hours away now from where they are, and I would drive at the drop of a hat every time she needed me, and stay at her house and watch the baby, because she's a nurse, and you have to be on call very early in the morning. And one day I had a conference in Orlando, and I asked if I could stay at her house, and I was just going to go for the day and drive back, and my
mhm,
car broke down. And so I said, can I stay overnight? I mean, it's my daughter. And so, and her husband was out of town, and she had to be in the operating room at 6 in the morning. And she said her dad was coming over to get the baby at 5:30 in the morning. And I said, but now I'm here. And so you don't have to pull him out of bed. I can be here, and I don't get to spend time with him. But I didn't know what time my car was going to be fixed, and I had to be back in Palm Beach for a conference that night that I was hosting. So I remember she still had him come and pick up the baby at 5:30 in the morning.
mm,
And I just cried myself to sleep. I go, it has to stop with her. Here's this baby, and there's no, because my ex-husband doesn't want to see me. He's even remarried, or doesn't want to
mhm,
hand off the baby. This baby had to be ripped out of bed at 5:30 in the morning. So I knew that this is the second generation. I've
mhm,
heard Mark say that, 6 generations, and I thought, this is so true.
mhm. Yeah, it's sickening, and I don't know how you get it to stop, if you get it to stop in the courtroom, but I think it's futile. Um, you know, the judges are not calling the shots, they're not holding anyone accountable. They're
Yeah.
if they order visitation, I don't know if you had this problem, but it gets ignored, and even if they're in contempt, it's a little slap on the wrist.
Yeah, I had that repeatedly, and it cost me so much money. And it seemed like I was always being charged bringing him back for contempt. In fact, one time, so this was in the 90s, the late 90s, and I thought when you're going into a contract, I mean, I spent a lot of time and money. We're sitting here working out this whole dynamic for a divorce, and then I had no clue it was unenforceable. I never would have spent so much time and energy and money. I'm like, okay, well, I'll bring him back to court. This is happening, and it was like nothing. And I
Mm,
thought, this is how it was in a marriage. You can do whatever you want, nobody else can. But I remember that my kids, my daughter was 13 and the other one was like 11, and I was supposed to have them for Christmas.
mm,
And I was trying to reach to work it out, and it turned out my ex-husband left and went to Mexico with somebody. And I went to pick up my kids. I brought the police, and I brought my divorce decrees, my Christmas. My children are left home unattended. No one was in that house, and this man's in Mexico. And the neighbor came out and said, well, they don't want to be with their mommy. And the police left. I had let my attorneys go. I was on my third attorney. I'm going, can't afford an attorney anymore. And here it is, my visitation. He's not even there. My children are not being supervised. And a neighbor has more right to say, if those children go with me on my visitation for Christmas,
mm.
than I do as the parent. I didn't know what to do. Who do you turn to? Where do you go?
Exactly. So why didn't the policeman ask the kids,
Well,
You
of
want to go
course,
with
they said, well, no, we don't want to go with her. And the neighbor came out of his house. Oh, we're going to keep an eye on them.
mm,
And
from your house, you're gonna keep an eye all the way across the street.
right, they were next door. And I thought, what right
Oh,
do you have to determine how my children are being raised? And the cop threw up his hands. And when you're in that too, it's so emotionally draining. I don't know what your experience was, but I was so beaten down by the time I left too. It's like, and you're fighting with resistance from your children and the system. I had really thought our law, I thought there was justice and fairness. And now a child died on their watch and they have blood on their hands.
mhm,
So now I've heard through the system that they talk in the system.
hmm, yeah,
I
and
mean, a
they're
life was lost.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I said, but a life was lost.
Right. Yeah, I wonder how they sleep at night.
Yeah. Do you know, so we had switched custody, and this was really when we had a downturn in the economy, and I got laid off. So but I tried switching custody, thinking he wouldn't keep doing these things, and I consulted with my attorney, the priest, just a lot of people before making this decision. I thought, well, then he wouldn't have the power to keep doing this. I mean, I didn't ever, I was married 21 years, and he was very involved with our children. I never would have thought that, even though he was controlling and narcissistic, that something like this could happen. It was not on my radar. I don't think this way. And so then I was unemployed, and he made six figures. So when my daughter died, I was paying him, because I always seem to hit things when it's not in my favor. So they were putting both incomes together to determine whatever, and I'm like, I'm unemployed.
Mhm.
And so what I was going to say is, then he didn't. There was one child, and they wouldn't sign off that there's now one child. In my grief of losing my daughter, they brought me back to court for contempt. Yes, and his attorney stood up and said, well, Your Honor, we don't want you to drag her off in handcuffs at this moment. Yeah, he stood up and said that to me after I just lost my child. And then the judge got it. And she looked at me, and yeah, like, no, I'm not paying for two children. I have one child, and they died in your care. And I wonder now if I could have sued him. I couldn't think properly then, you know,
I wonder.
for neglect.
Well, the thing is, like, if someone calls in a false accusation on you, and then we'll say 2 years have passed and something happened to your kid, and you go to call CPS and say, "This has happened," or even if the school, psychologist or whoever calls and said, "Hey, this is what happened to this kid." They come up with some excuse saying, "Well, everyone has different parenting styles."
Yep.
That's what I got. I thought, "Oh, really? If that was me, they'd be coming after me to lock me up."
Yeah. So then the judge, she got it then, that
Mhm.
he was not as he appeared to be. And they wouldn't let me leave the courthouse because they thought I would be hurt. That was the first time that I thought, but could you imagine? I'm sitting there by myself in my grief, and he's the attorney. How can the attorney even stand up and say that? Well, Your Honor, we don't expect you to put her in handcuffs and drag her off.
Oh, yeah, he's a narcissist too.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
they found each other.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They really do. I'm glad the judge caught it. What did the judge say? Like, "No, we're not doing this today." What did she say? Do you remember?
No, I forget. And I'd even brought some things that were his that were still in my house to give to him. She was very diplomatic, but then when they got up to leave, she ruled that, it needed to be changed, and there was one child, and blah blah. And because I was in such shock at that being said, and fearful. See, now I was fearful of the courts. I
Mhm.
didn't trust them. I
Oh,
didn't trust there was fairness. I was so afraid of anything I was going to say would be misconstrued, because I had been the emotional one because my children were in trouble. And
Right.
we had been even court ordered to a program called Focus on the Children for high conflict. Like, this was mutual to get divorced. It was a mutual decision, but he thought everything was his after 20 years, or I don't know what happened. But I wrote up something and it was fair. And so to be considered a high conflict divorce, it was because the children are treated like an asset, like your house,
Mhm.
and they're a bargaining chip. And so, in fact, he wanted us to separate the children. He goes, I'll take one and you take one, because he didn't want to pay child support. This
Mhm.
is a CPA PhD. Yeah. So his idea, and I go, I am not separating our children, because
Oh.
what I've gone through, the more I come back and revisit it, and I'm healthier and I know better. I'm just like, and then my daughter thinks this person is good and a hero, and I'm the bad person. It's so mind-boggling. It's really hard to wrap your hand, and people don't
Mm-mm.
understand. They really think you're a bad parent or something. Um, so what was I saying? I think, he wanted one child over the other. I had a good point. Now I forget.
I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't
No,
interrupt
it's
you.
my fault.
Oh.
I got off on yeah. What I was saying, that he didn't really appear that way, but when it came down to control, and it's all about control and power. And I kept trying to minimize things to have the least damage for our children,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know? So
Right,
it
because
was really hard.
yeah, I mean, they tell the parents, "Don't badmouth. Don't you," the judge would admonish both of you saying, "Don't you badmouth." It's like, I was never badmouthing. The kids were coming back telling me that they were badmouthing me. I'm going, "Really?" That helps with the brainwashing eventually.
Oh, so I know what I was going to say. We were court ordered to this program called Focus on the Children. And I thought, oh, there's hope. And it
Oh.
was under armed guard at the courthouse in Orlando. And there were 3 mediators there from the JCC. And they were teaching you how to communicate and how to role play. So we were different couples. We had to go for 6 or 8 weeks. I forget now. And then for a couple of weeks, they were bringing the children in because they saw the children were collateral damage of the situation, and
Mhm.
they were starting to be troubled. And I thought, oh, good, finally, because I'm like, who is going to see that my children are in trouble to integrate um, I can't think of the word all of a sudden.
Integrate?
Not to integrate, to intersect, the situation. And so my children didn't get there because I had switched that custody, told them that they didn't have to go. And again, they're court ordered. They were court ordered for counseling. They were court ordered to be there. And he got away with it with no slap on the hand. And then at the end of this, they said, what's one thing that you learned? I mean, these are skills you can use in life.
Mhm.
And he said, I learned nothing, absolutely nothing. And I met him. He was my college professor. I mean, at the end of classes, at the end of the term, they'd always have a survey. What did you learn in my class? And
Mhm,
da da
mhm.
da. And everyone was like angry. They're like, what? And then we had to come back for a follow up. And by then, my daughter was gone. And they were and I talk about this in my story because I was so glad he didn't show up and he didn't show his face at the, we had to come back after 6 weeks as a follow up. And, I could tell everyone it made an impact
Mhm.
because they were afraid this could happen to them. They
Mhm.
don't know what their child is going to do. Are you
Mm-mm.
going to get this and communicate, or are you going to play Russian roulette with your child's life?
Mhm.
And I held up the picture of my daughter's mass card,
Mhm.
really. And the mediators told me that I made an impact because I want to save other people's lives. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want my daughter's life to be in vain. And I'm so just in shock that my other daughter is still, she's in her 30s now. She just recently got divorced. And
Mhm.
I thought, the only way I can deal with it is having compassion, because you cannot, I want my daughter to be happy, but
Mhm.
these attributes and her, were taught and they're ingrained in her, and she thinks this is correct, and it's not going to pan out in relationships and happiness. You cannot act this way and have a good life. And her
Mhm.
first degree is in psychology.
Oh.
um, but I talk to other people that go, textbook psychology is very different than, you know, but
Mhm.
we all see things through our filters. And I just feel so sad because I know early childhood education. I, I just go back to, you know, those first 6 or 7 years of a child's life is really when they get all of their values and their way of being. And I
Mhm.
was there. And that's why I wanted to be the stay-at-home mom. I
Mhm.
volunteered
Mhm.
at their school. I made them costumes. I wanted to be the mom that I didn't have or that I wanted. And look at what a mess this is. You know, I think that's a really hard thing
Mhm.
to come to terms with.
Well, sometimes I feel there's just so much you can do. You're doing the right thing, but, you know, things
There's a
happen.
fear. Yep, it's happened.
And in my opinion, it was caused by your ex
Mhm.
and the
And I'm willing to
brainwashing.
own my part of different things, but this is because I thought, okay, one child committed suicide, the other's estranged, and I thought about this today because I'm really trying to just be above it in a way, because it's so dark and heavy, and I just can't live in that space anymore. You know, I have to have some acceptance, but not give up and keep pursuing things. But I thought, you know, this is on him for
Mhm.
teaching these skills of life.
Right, and when you were in that meeting for him to say, "Oh, I didn't learn anything." I mean, that's a sign of a narcissist. They know it all and everything's your fault.
Yeah. I know my heart sunk then. Like, there's nothing that's going to change. You know, you have hope that this is going to change, or I can only change me. So it's really brought me to a very different level of spirituality. I feel that my daughter passed me a baton, and I've wanted to speak about this for years, but I didn't want to jeopardize any chance of relationship with my other daughter. But the world needs to know this is happening all over the place. What did they say? It affects about 3.8 million children, 22 million, because it isn't just the children, right, Marianne?
Mhm, mhm,
It's the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, the grandparents.
mhm. Yeah, and so many grandparents are suffering wanting to see their kids, and, you know, if you've got a judge that's not cooperating, it the other grandparents lose out.
I am. My child's, my grandson, he was the sweetest, most beautiful little boy, and I just poured into him. But at Thanksgiving, my daughter went to my brother's house, so I got to see her and him. I don't even know what I did. I was there constantly taking care of him,
Mhm,
driving 2.5 hours each way, getting him in daycare, all whatever she needed. And he said, "You're not my grandmother. I already have." And no one said anything. And my daughter just sat there.
mhm.
I go, "Yeah," because you know, a lot of times you take names like before, it's like, "What do you want to be called?" So I'm being called BB. And it never dawned on me that he wouldn't think I'm his grandmother. And then you don't want to freak your grandchild out. Oh, you know, get into this whole thing and your daughter. And I was just like, what? You're allowing him to think I'm not even his grandmother? Seriously?
Mm,
What? And then I thought, you know, this child's going to be angry that he was lied to.
mhm,
But we lose so many years. And here he's already in a divorce situation. Why would you deny your child love from
mhm,
every source and every person that could be there giving love? You're denying that child the love of a grandparent.
mhm,
Or I've never felt that it was my right to tell my children how or what kind of relationship they should have with anyone.
mhm.
I felt that was them, their right to have their own relationships. So I'm feeling penalized as my grandson's taken hostage, and Florida has no rules for grandparents. There are no rights.
Hmm. That's terrible. I'm so sorry.
Because I wanted to do something, and this is like, it's so counterintuitive. So if you don't go to the correct therapist, and at that time people didn't even talk about this, and that it's counterintuitive. So you don't know if you should, do something through the law, or if you need to be tiptoeing around to be emotionally working, because you can do more harm, and it's cult behavior,
Yes,
it's
yes, it
cult
is.
behavior.
Yeah, I mean, everyone talks about the brainwashing and all of this. It's insidious.
It's
Yeah.
despairing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize until I went to see that movie. I saw it when I just had moved down to this part of Florida with Dr. Mark Rosen. That was the first time Caroline Rena had introduced me and said, "Oh, we're having this premiere." I just found her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to it, and I didn't realize that for family court, the laws are different than other areas of law.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all these years, no wonder I couldn't get anything accomplished, or
Mm-hmm.
it is such a money maker.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know?
They want to create the high conflict to
Yes.
keep you coming back.
Yes. They
And
churn the cases.
right. And the judges, and I've seen it where, the judge said, "Okay, I want us all back in 2 months for a reevaluation." I'm like, "For what?"
Yeah.
You
Back
want
you're
to,
here. For what?
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
it is,
yeah,
and I
another,
thought, plus just divorce. I mean, the kids have two of everything, and another room here and another TV here. And I mean, it fuels our economy.
right. And in that film, Erasing Family, which was really interesting, they talked about the Sweden model where
Yes.
some parents have enough sense to sit down and write down who pays for what and how they're going to work out a schedule. And that's all well and good if you've got a mentally healthy, fit parent to do this with. It will work.
Yes.
But if you're working with a personality disorder, it's not going to happen.
Yes, it's like, yeah. In fact, the third attorney I had, he goes, "Well, you married him. There's only so much you can do." It's like mediating with a wall. Unless I
Hmm.
gave or compromised, the needle didn't move for anything, and he continued to win and win and win and get his way. I mean, I stayed 10 years too long. I think I was afraid to divorce him because you couldn't work. I go, yeah, that's what I've been dealing with for all these years. I mean, you can't. I mean, I'm certainly not jealous of them being remarried. I feel sorry for the person.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you negotiate? Or this is my life too. I can't
Hmm.
waste any more of my life.
Hmm.
And I don't know if this happened to you, Marianne, but I mean, he would start putting me down and making fun of me in the marriage with the
Yes.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, I don't want my daughters thinking they can grow up and be treated that way.
Right. I mean, like, sometimes I like to sing, so I would be singing with the radio, something on, with the band U2, and he'd walk by and go, "Oh, you're out of tune." And then when I went to put my oldest into music lessons, private music lessons, he says, "What does she need that for?" I said, "Well, because she's talented." And this is when we were divorced, so I was paying for her lessons. I didn't mind. But that's how you get treated by these people that think they're
Yes.
better than you.
Yes. Where really they have an inferiority complex,
Mm.
and it's their insecurities, but it comes out. And I think when you're a college professor, you're tenured, you get new people every semester that hang on your every word. I saw the transition of, becoming more and more narcissistic as
Mhm.
time went on. And, there's just there's a no-win battle, and it's really, and I we all do this, I think, you know, trying to escape from somebody in my family, and I ended up marrying them,
Yeah. Oh, well, it's a
I was in
shame.
a different package, but it's the same behaviors,
Mhm.
you know, and you can't win with them.
No, and their behaviors won't change either.
No. Mm-mm.
I don't know, and I'm sorry your daughter suffered, going through that, and you were treated so badly at that on that day as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. It
Uh
was really when we went. So this happened on a Saturday night, and at our church they had a youth mass on Sundays, and so the word spread around. Everybody come to the youth mass, and I had substituted at that school. I taught Sunday school at that school, and then we get there, and it's only my other daughter and my ex-husband sitting there with the youth director, and I was left out. And I was up in the stands. My parents came in from Miami, and I stood up in the middle and I go, "Well, I'm her mother. And how dare the youth minister leave me out?" It was like I was erased. And then
Mhm,
other mothers were coming up to me and saying, "Oh, we thought her mother was dead." And we thought, so that's why I talk about collateral damage. You
mhm,
have this grief of your own child, then you're in these situations that are just what? And these stories and the BS, and then everybody believes the other person. It is like you're sentenced. I mean, I think character defamation,
mhm,
defrauding somebody, those are laws against that. And that's what's happening to us in our population.
mhm,
And that's why I choose to speak out. And it's the needle is so slow moving in the courts, and with reunification of children. In fact, we were court ordered to a therapist for reunification, and I searched high and low for one, and then he was so burned out. And I think this happens too. The judges are so burned out, they're sick of hearing all this stuff.
mhm,
And at first they're a little fresh, like we had a new judge and it was a woman, and I was so hopeful. And by several times visits later on, you could see she was just like, "Oh God, I gotta face this every day of
mhm,
this," and these are our children.
mhm,
They're not like a piece of furniture or your car. They are hearing everything, they are seeing everything, they're afraid to say anything, they don't know how to navigate this. And that's where my greatest concern is, like, they have to know. And so I've been working in trauma, and I've gotten certifications in some trauma healing and guiding and mindfulness. And our children need these tools early because they do not know how to navigate.
mhm, mhm. And they need these skills.
Yes.
Oh.
I just realized I left something on the stove. I'm so sorry. I can smell it.
Oh, yeah, I'll wait.
I'm so sorry.
She's coming. We've all done it, people. We've all left something on the stove. Hang in there.
Oh my gosh, I never do that.
Well, hey, yes, we have. We've all done it. Now you can say you've done it.
It's been a long time since I did it. I used to do
Uh,
that when I was with my kids. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was constantly thinking, who can I call? What can I do? How do I solve this? Your mind doesn't stop.
no, it doesn't. It just keeps going. Uh, I don't know.
So my thing is that how can we speak? I really appreciate this platform because we have to get the word out. That's what I'm thinking. Like, working one-on-one is just too slow. The
Mhm,
therapists are not open to this. The judges aren't open to this. The attorneys are clueless. They're just representing their client. They don't realize the damage they're doing to the children,
mhm.
right?
Right.
Because they're trained, I have to prove for my client. And even other parents, they don't realize the damage they're doing. I'm working with a friend right now. She's up in Pennsylvania, and it's 3 years in, and her two children are, it's serious. She's been actually talking with and having sessions with Dr. Amy Baker, but who can afford this for long periods of time?
Hmm.
And she said this is extreme. But what you get faced with as the targeted parent is you're always being bad and mean.
Hmm.
So every time it's her visitation, her preteen daughter wants to spend the night at someone else's house, and the mom's really protective of her. And then she tries to call the mom, and the mom just puts her own daughter, the woman's daughter, on the phone. She goes, well, I thought you probably wanted to talk to her. It's like, no, I want to talk to you. And then the child's mad because they want to spend the night at their friend's house, but it's only on your time. And then the
Hmm.
other, now can I stay till Saturday night? Now
Uh,
so you're always being like this bad person for your rights and your own child. And the other parents think they're saving that child from
mhm,
this parent, where they're really an accomplice. They're aiding and abetting the situation. So other parents don't, because they can't imagine people doing this.
mhm,
They're like, if you're not seeing the other parent, you must be bad.
mhm.
Or people can't decipher what is correct and what is not correct. Don't you
And
agree?
and I think these people, if you're hearing one side of the story, I I don't know why people don't question the other side of the
Yes.
story. I can tell you stories and story. I have a lot of flying monkey stories, but
Flying monkey story.
and for people that don't know what a flying monkey is, it's these people that help interfere in
Yeah.
your child's life against you.
Yes.
And that's also they're also accomplices of child
Yeah.
abuse.
Yes.
And
I think there's a bill right now trying to get passed that this is being declared as child abuse.
mhm. Yeah, and it has to be done. It has to be enforced as well. We've got to get
That's the
these.
problem.
Yeah, the judges have got to step up to the plate and say, "Okay, I'm going to fine you," or write a citation. I've heard of that. That they're talking about, like, like a traffic ticket. Okay, this offense because you withheld visitation from your wife or husband. This citation is going to be $350.
Yeah,
How,
that'll change things. It's
yeah.
talking money. So when the kids, then they come over for the visitation, they just lock themselves in their room. And it was interesting because she shared with me, because this is so painful, and it's somebody I've just gotten to know because I know them from business, and it was like I mentioned something, she went, oh, that's happening to me, because you just don't talk about this,
Hmm.
and you become isolated. I think women especially become isolated. And so she said, her son said, when it was Valentine's Day, he goes, Mom, when he was 5, I'll be your Valentine, because he knew that she wasn't being treated well by her husband. So they were
Hmm.
still married. But now it's like Valentine's Day, and it's like, you're the mean one and you broke up the marriage, because that's what they're taught. And of course, if you decided that you're being abused as a woman and you don't want that, but they're putting this on the children, that your mother broke up the marriage. I mean,
Yeah, they shouldn't be doing that at all. These people are grossly immature.
yes, yes.
And then,
Because, and when I saw that program called Focus on the Children, I'm thinking,
mhm,
that's right. So every decision I was making, I was trying to make for the betterment of my children, but I couldn't.
because you're blocked. You're just
Lost
like,
at
yeah,
every turn.
it's a roadblock, and you're being railroaded at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Because that would happen to me as well. As I would get them every other weekend, and of course they would want their friends to come over and sleep over. But then I thought, well, at least they're coming here,
Yes,
and
that's what I
and
said. Can they come to your house? But she wants to go to their house.
no, see, I wouldn't allow that. I just said, I don't get to see you. I only get to see you for a handful of hours a month. Have them come over here. We'll do pizza and donuts in the morning. I mean, not pizza, but the
Yeah.
donuts in the morning. And that's just how we worked it. Everyone was happy, you know?
Yep. That's what I told her. I said, can't all the friends come to your house?
Hmm.
Yep. And
And
then the
she's
next thing they're trying to go on vacation. And it's like, it's then again, and then the ex-husband is, well, aren't you going to pay for the airfare? And aren't you going to, and it's like, but then if you put your foot down and say, no, these are my weeks, then the kids are madder at you.
Mhm.
It's really, you're always in a no-win situation.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
But you know what? Something that hit me, because as I said, I couldn't even read a lot of these things for years because I would just start crying and feel so hopeless. I couldn't. It was so close to home and so right on, and I always walked away with this hopelessness. And
mhm,
I just thought it's better for me not to read this stuff. But I know that I'm supposed to use the story and use my daughter's life to create change or awareness. And no, I forget what I was going to say. It was, oh my gosh. Last year, I went to and watched the symposium, and this one woman, she had been a police officer, and then she changed, and I think she's a therapist and everything, and she gave statistics.
mhm,
That's why we have to change this, because as you said, all the generations, the statistics are suicide, self-harm, crime, violence, because the children are hurt and
mhm,
they don't know what to do. So systemically, this is a cultural situation happening and leading to violence and death.
mhm,
And so if anything else, that should put some emphasis and concern on everyone dealing with this problem. Our children are being harmed. And
mhm,
look at all the school shootings, look at all the fear and depression that our young youth are having. They're thrown in the middle of this and they don't know what to do.
mhm. And also drug addiction, alcohol issues,
That's
and,
right. I didn't even
yeah.
mention that.
Oh,
And
no, that's all right.
no, but I was thinking, and so yesterday, I went to the beach. I'm lucky enough to live near the beach, and I knew it'd probably be crowded, but I went there early, and hardly anyone was on the beach. But there was this one woman next to me, and with her dog, and so as she was leaving, I don't know, we started a little conversation, and I don't know how it came up. You know, of course, it's Mother's Day, and I said, "Yeah, I'm honoring myself. I don't know if I'll hear." We just started talking, and then she said that her her mom and dad had gotten divorced, and really she wasn't in contact with her dad. She goes, he had some weird stuff, and I'll give it to him that there were things, but they really turned me against my dad. And her mom remarried. It didn't sound like a parental alienation thing, but here she was 40, and she said, I thought I really had this yearning to connect to my dad and really
Mhm,
understand him and know him. And then, so she made up her mind for that. And she goes, we all have our quirks. Now I'm an adult. I'm raising children. Why don't I know much about my dad, or why isn't he in the picture?
mhm,
And she realized that they had really kept him away and he gave up.
mhm.
And I said, yeah, I know that. And she was ready to meet up with him, and he had a massive heart attack, and she never got to be with him. So
Oh,
she
yeah.
said, something triggers in some age that it gave me hope. But I thought, here, look what happens from this.
Mhm,
We think we're necessarily doing something right or protecting our children, but children have the right to both parents. And that
mhm,
hit home for me yesterday, that our children always want to know the other parent.
mhm. Yeah, it's just unfortunate that this has been going on for probably centuries, really.
Centuries, yeah.
And,
So yesterday, this popped up where I said I might go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it brings it all to home, really. I don't know how this popped up on my YouTube, and I really was staying unplugged yesterday. I thought I just gave myself a gift of the day. And it turns out that it was about a child, a princess in Belgium that was a legitimate, but Prince Albert, King Albert, it turned out, had been having an affair for 18 years. And this child was his daughter.
mhm,
And somebody was doing a biography on King Albert's wife, who was from Italy, and he put in like one sentence, like everybody in Belgium, I guess, knew that this child existed, and no one talked about it. And of course, you're protecting your country. And so he put one sentence about a child, a suspected, he didn't even name things or go to extremes, but it all blew up. And then she came out of the closet and started saying, I have the rights, and he wouldn't do a DNA. And of course it brought, this is just recent years, and she's an artist in London. And she said it was she was 33 when she realized that that was her father, because he had spent a lot of time with her as a young child as his mother's good friend. So she knew him and all this, but he would not, and he would still not admit that he was the father, and he wouldn't do a DNA. And she brought him to court and fought this, and she won just recently. And she said, I have a right to know
Mm-hmm.
who I belong to,
Mm-hmm.
who my parents are. I don't want to destroy the country. I don't want anything for him, but my children deserve the title.
Mm-hmm.
I get to be accepted as one of the children. And I also have that right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that's the same, even though it's a different context. And the people of Belgium gave King Albert a lot of grief that he was not being a father to his child,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a very Catholic nation. So, I mean, that you have that dynamic. And she talked to and I thought, wow, that's right what we're talking about. You have a right to both parents, even though it's
Right.
a different context. And so I saw, so it was on 60 Minutes Australia, that was the interview. And then there was an addendum because of all this pressure from the Belgian people that he didn't step to the plate to be the father. I mean, this is that they reunited, and he just made a statement that this is a healing process, and he's sorry for the things that had happened,
Mm-hmm.
but they will. And I thought, wow, that's the same thing and the same dynamics that are what we're dealing with.
Right. And also even his physical genetics, like if there's, say, kidney issues that run on his side of the family, that, I mean, she would need to know,
Medical
because
issues.
right, medical issues, uh, what you could
Well, these
inherit.
were her brothers and her sisters. She, she was shunned. She had been shunned and lived in isolation and hidden, like a hidden person,
Mm.
you know, like you're not allowed to exist.
Oh, how sad.
But
Huh.
she was so, she is so spot on and centered and understanding of things. But then she had the courage this time in when it came up to fight this and to be acknowledged and recognized for who she really was.
Mhm.
You have to look up that story. I just saw that part this morning, and I just thought it was so relevant.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. So, and that happened in Belgium.
Yes,
Mm.
with the royal family.
Oh, so sad. Jeez.
But
Yeah.
now there's an outcome, and she has stepbrothers and so she was warmly received by her stepbrother. I mean, we've got to walk in that path then too. And yeah, it wasn't a one night fling. you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm. Right, right.
And yeah,
Wow.
but understanding the dynamics of, and I know in so many countries that this exists, and it's not frowned upon and such. But I thought, wow, what courage she had. And when they made that statement, and the people rose up saying, you are the father and you need to step up to the plate, buddy.
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Oh, wow. That I'm glad the, judge or whoever ruled in her favor. I mean, it's logical. She should know.
Yes. But he
Oh.
wouldn't do a DNA. But finally, and she said, he made such a big deal of it. It could have been behind closed doors in a very loving, kind, quiet way, and it wouldn't
Mhm.
have been all over the papers and everything.
Right. He kinda blew it. Oh.
Blew it.
Oh.
Yeah. Um, anyway, I just thought that was an interesting story. And so I just felt compelled and was invited to be part of a book. And it's called Ignite Possibilities. So it's a compilation book. It's going to be out on Amazon May 28th. and it's a free download. So we're hoping it'll go to bestseller. And it's how do you get past situations. We all have situations to overcome, and they're all not, the stories are not all like mine. Some are business stories or other stories of health or something, and cultural. And so there's a quote that we all come up with, our power quote, because this book is bringing hope through different stories of what
Mhm.
people have overcome. And mine is out of your pain, let's live into our possibilities. And because like you and we're still living in this sustained grief. It's like sustained trauma,
Right.
PTSD, because it's not going away. We're dealing with, here it was Mother's Day, my daughter didn't reach out to me,
Mm.
and I could take, I was working very hard, and also having lost a child, you know to be able to stay happy and see everybody posting all the things that their
Mm.
kids were doing for them. It's
Yeah.
hard.
It is very hard. Now, you also wrote a book called Remember Me,
So
Mom.
that's the story in this book,
Oh,
is
really?
Remember Me, Mom. And that's the story of my daughter Erin, and bringing to light parental alienation,
Mm.
um, and telling my story. So it was I know there's a solo book in there. It was hard to make it short, but I hope that it makes an impact. I hope that it creates awareness, and I hope more people come forward and speak out
Do you think
for
they might
change.
make a documentary? I can't even
Documentary.
talk. A documentary about all these stories in this book.
Yeah. Oh, say that again.
Do you think, like, with that
No,
book? No?
because she has like the last month they had one, Ignite Entrepreneurs, and it's
Mm.
this whole community, a publishing community, and I was invited to be in it, and especially with that title.
Yeah.
So boy, I didn't even like to journal or to go back and rethink and put these in a succinct way that is not so heavy, but that can be teaching, but that can also make an impact. That look at what happens here. And so I would love to make a documentary of our situation, and I'm gonna, I had to leave out so much, but it really lit a fire in me on writing. And
Mhm.
but that's an emotional experience, and
Mhm.
I think for me, bringing things up, having this conversation is very healing.
Mhm. I think it is too. It's like a therapy session, you know?
Like some people have to hide their head under the covers and they don't deal with anything, but and there are Facebook pages like that. Some people, and I think as you were saying earlier, they stay in their stuff because that feeds their ego in a way. Like our behavior interests me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I think that you get something out of your behavior. So for some people, misery and victimization, and they feed off of that, as opposed to, I have to move on for this. But I think acceptance of this kind of situation is hard. It's hard
Mhm.
to accept, but seriously, I'm the mother. You lived in my body. I
Yeah.
was the one breastfeeding you. I was the one taking care of you with colic. I was the one up all night.
Mhm.
And I'm just a big nothing.
Mhm.
It's unbelievable that that it can, that the neural pathways,
Mhm.
and fast. It happens really fast, doesn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, very quickly. Uh,
And
I
I don't think we're even grasping it early enough to realize what's happening, and they're already thinking in those realms.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very insidious. 1 minute your kid can love you to pieces, and then 3 days later, they're done with you. It's just very sad.
I think for my daughter, this is what I'm, maybe makes me feel good, or figure, you want to rationalize it out and figure it out because it's such a puzzle. And it's just people escaping from a cult, a few make it out. But I feel like the heart is so hardened, or those thoughts are so ingrained that, oh my God, if I let those a different perspective, what is gonna it's a Pandora's box
Mhm.
for everything I've believed in. And not everyone can do this work.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, we have to um, advocate and teach people and educate as many parents as we can, because what happened to us definitely can happen to them.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
do you have any last words you'd like to say? Any words of advice for anyone, any parent that might be going through this?
Well, one thing is that I talked about this in our talk we did for International Parental Alienation Day, is you this is a marathon. And so I know I didn't take care of myself at the beginning. So um taking care of yourself, self-care, and you feel selfish because you're like, oh my God, all this is happening, and what can I do? And we're, always giving to our children, but we have to put the oxygen mask on and think logically. And when you're in the courts, to appear together and not emotional. And we have to be very discerning who we talk to, because people do not understand this, and you can get labeled even with teachers or health professionals.
Mhm.
And so it's very, you really, if you have any suspect, if you suspect any of this, then you need to do your homework. Like now there's YouTubes, there's professionals talking about this.
Mhm.
And no, just the word parental alienation, I want to get out in our vocabulary, so that do some research, be quiet and discerning as you figure this out, but
Mhm.
act quickly and find the correct people that can help you, because therapists and people who do not know what they're doing will cement it and do more damage than good.
That's
That's
for
what I
sure.
have to
Yes,
suggest to you.
I agree with you there. How can people reach you if they want to talk to you or run something past you? How can you be reached?
Yes. So I'm doing mindfulness work, and I have a course for women with children getting divorced. When you're in the middle of it, it's you can't dive deep because it's so much emotional, but it's about a 4-week course to hit some of the highlights of things I wished I had known, and to help mitigate the trauma. I always like to prevention and get ahead of the trauma before it's immersed more in you and more in your children. So I have a course like that. So my business is called Wellness Matter, You Matter, because our children need to matter. Everyone matters no matter what. And it's physical and emotional trauma. So you can email me at info@Wellness Matters You Matter. I also have a Facebook page, Wellness Matters You Matter, and an Instagram. So please reach out, and I'm going to offer more things. And I really want to be able to help the community, because I felt so alone and I isolated, and that did a lot of damage to me.
Mhm. Well, I'd like to have you back on again, if you would like to come back on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marianne, and
Yes.
all the work that you're doing. Yeah, and we didn't even, I hate to say that I'm in 3 clubs: the loss of a child, a suicide, and parental alienation.
The
Uh, those aren't the clubs I wanted to be in, but
No.
I feel there's clarity now after a number of years that I need to speak out and be able
Mhm.
to give hope.
And we'll do it again.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah, just let me know when you're ready to pop back on, and we'll stay in touch. We'll
We'll
stay
stay
in
in
touch
touch.
for sure.
If I
So
can help
slip
you with anything as well, please let me know. And you can also reach me at, I also have a Facebook page, Barbara Drtina. So it's like Dr. Tina. There's no vowel there. It's Drtina. But I'm readily available.
There you go. That's a lot of help for people that need help.
Yes. And please look, this is my first authorship. So it's a free download on May 28th. And I'm going to be interviewed at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time for 15 minutes. And write a review. I would really appreciate the support. And because I wrote this story to help others.
Definitely. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again in the future with Barb and other guests. Thank you so much, Barb.